Yo, what's up guys? Teacher Paul here, and today we are reacting to a video which is from Economics Explained. If you want to watch that video without my commentary or reaction, link is in the description. But guys, let's check this out and learn a little bit about Denmark. And Economics Explained says Denmark should not be rich. And let's find out why. So do you guys agree or disagree with that statement? It's very bold statement, but also on the thumbnail, it says taxing their way to wealth. So this is a very interesting video, which was suggested by Maria, and we're going to learn a little bit about Denmark, its taxation, and why it's not supposed to be rich. Interesting. Let's check it out, guys. Let's go.
Denmark should not be rich. It's small, it's cold, it has almost no oil wealth, no vast industrial base, and it taxes nearly half of everything its economy produces.
That's crazy.
Income taxes are sky high. There's a 25% VAT on almost everything.
That is unbelievable. I've seen we're going to start the video again. I wasn't ready for that. And I've seen memes of people saying, hey, when did the government start working half of my shift? Why is it taking half of my income when it's not working half of my shift? And let me know if that is a relatable statement, or if you guys are okay with the taxation, if you're okay with that amount of deductions or tax. But let's check this out.
Denmark should not be rich. It's small, it's cold, it has almost no oil wealth, no vast industrial base, and it taxes nearly half of everything its economy produces. Income taxes are sky high. There's a 25% VAT on almost everything, and Danish workers spend some of the fewest hours at their desks in the developed world. And yet, somehow, Denmark is one of the most prosperous countries on the planet.
Amazing.
Its economy is stable, its companies are global giants, its people enjoy free education, universal healthcare, and some of the highest living standards anywhere. And while much of the developed world is struggling with
higher than
debt,
Norway
stagnant wages, Denmark just keeps getting richer. So, how is this possible?
How?
At first glance, it might seem like just another Scandinavian success story.
Beautiful.
But unlike Norway, it didn't get rich off fossil fuels, and unlike Sweden, it's not powered by global tech giants.
Wait, Norway is not only rich because of fossil fuels. We have been through that. It's not only because of that. We've been through that. And by the way, thank you for the follow. Thank you so much. Perfi, where are you watching from? Thank you so much.
Yet, by many measures, it's outperforming them both, with faster GDP growth, higher per capita wealth, and one of the lowest public debt.
Wait, Denmark is outperforming Norway? You're telling me that Denmark right now is outperforming Norway? That is so cool. That is a hard thing to do, to outperform Norway in economics.
Levels in Europe. But before we crown Denmark the perfect economy, it's worth noting the cracks in the foundation. Rising housing costs, labour shortages, and pressure on its welfare system, particularly from immigration and an ageing population, mean the Danish model isn't without its problems. Still, it's a system that works remarkably well, so the question is, how? How is Denmark pulling this off? Is it a fluke, or is there a formula behind its success? To find out, we need to, as always, answer a few important questions. Why haven't high taxes gotten in the way like they were supposed to? Are there any special advantages that Denmark has had over its peers? And finally, is this equitable dreamland really sustainable in the long term? Once we have done all of that, we can put Denmark on the Economics Explained leaderboard, a country with a real shot at taking the top spot.
Wait a second. Let's look at that list right there. How is Singapore so rich? We definitely need to deep dive into Singapore as well. Let's look at the Economics Explained leaderboard. United States is number 1. Wait, New York? What? They're not categorizing it by country. United States, New York, Singapore, California, Ireland. Ireland is up there too. Switzerland, Texas, Florida, China, Norway. Wait, what? Dude, US is so powerful. So rich.
If there's one thing Denmark proves, it's that long-term planning, especially around money, really pays off. That's the idea behind Trading 212, who is kindly sponsoring this video. With Trading 212, you can invest in real stocks and ETFs with zero commission and even buy fractional shares.
I'm not getting commission for this, so we're going to jump ahead.
Gradually. Every share worth up to €100. It would be easy to assume that Denmark has always been rich, but for most of its history it was anything but. For centuries Denmark was a poor agricultural country. It relied on farming, fishing and small-scale trade while its neighbours in Germany, Britain and France raced ahead with industrialisation. Even as factors transformed Europe in the 19th century, Denmark remained heavily reliant on dairy and meat exports, with little in the way of high-value industries like machinery, chemicals or advanced manufacturing. By the end of the 20th century, Denmark was struggling. It faced economic crises, war disruptions and weak industrial development. But after World War II, everything changed. Although occupied by Nazi Germany from 1940 to 1945, Denmark escaped the war with most of its infrastructure intact. And it faced a major choice.
Congratulations.
Stay a low-productivity agrarian economy or modernise and integrate into the rapidly developing global trade. It chose the latter. In the decades that followed, the country opened up its economy and joined the Nordic Council, the European Free Trade Association, and eventually the European Economic Community, which later evolved into the European Union. By integrating into the world's largest trading bloc, Denmark gained access to vast new markets, allowing its industries to expand far beyond its tiny domestic economy. At the same time, alongside its Nordic neighbours, Denmark embraced what would become the Nordic model, a hybrid system combining capitalism.
Model. Everyone should follow this model. Denmark gave up only hours into the invasion. That's why it kept its infrastructure. I mean, I think it was the easiest one to invade, right? Because it's like border. I guess so.
With a strong welfare state. Education was one of its first big investments. University became free and so did vocational training. Workers also stayed skilled and adaptable thanks to a national commitment to lifelong training. Compared to most other advanced economies where people will commit the first few years of their life to training and then hope that carries them throughout the rest of their career. And it paid off. Danish workers became some of the most productive in the world.
Well, the 10 most productive countries in the world. Ireland is number 1. Norway, Luxembourg, Denmark, Switzerland, Belgium, Sweden, Austria, Netherlands, and United States.
Universal healthcare followed. Unlike in many other countries where medical costs can derail families and businesses, Denmark provides high-quality healthcare to all citizens. This isn't just seen as a social policy that's nice to do for people, but rather it's considered a...
See, that's the crazy part. How can Denmark, and any Scandinavian country, how can they provide free healthcare, like really high-quality healthcare, and the United States not have that? If the United States is the biggest economy, It's crazy to think that. It's actually crazy to think that. But honestly, be honest, guys. Is the healthcare system good? Because we have a healthcare system here in the UK also. It's not always the best. And thank you so much for the follow. Thank you so much. We have just hit our 250 goal. Thank you. 250 followers on Twitch. Guys, join us and follow, especially if you're from Denmark or anyone else. Welcome to VTS. Thanks for following. Let me know where you're watching from.
This isn't just seen as a social policy that's nice to do for people, but...
The UK healthcare has a bad reputation in Europe, okay, and the USA uses more money on healthcare than any Nordic country. So why is it not free healthcare? What? And I've seen videos, people saying it's $2,000 or $2,500 just to call an ambulance, whereas it's free in Europe.
Denmark provides high-quality healthcare to all citizens. This isn't just seen as a social policy that's nice to do for people, but rather it's considered a prudent economic strategy. Healthy workers take fewer sick days and have longer careers, which means more people working and contributing to the economy.
Makes sense.
And then there was something even more unexpected.
If you're sick,
bicycles.
You can't work.
Copenhagen's consistently ranked one of the most bike-friendly cities in the world, but this wasn't by accident. Since 2005, the government has invested over $200 million in cycling infrastructure. Why? Because cycling makes people healthier, less stressed, and more productive. And to top off the personal perks, biking has helped Denmark reduce traffic, improve air quality, and slash commuting times, making life easier for workers and the economy more efficient. But none of this came cheap. In the late 1960s, Denmark made a radical decision. It expanded its welfare state dramatically, funding free healthcare, free education, and social protections with higher taxes. Its tax to GDP ratio rose from 29% in 1965 to nearly 50%. Critics.
So let me know if you agree. Higher taxes, they get half of your taxes, but they actually deliver free healthcare, they actually deliver free education, and they actually deliver what they're promising on. Does that system work? Well, Denmark seems to agree that it works. One of the wealthiest countries in the world. So yeah, as long as you're using my taxes for what you're promising me, I don't see a problem there, I guess. If it's going to make me wealthier and more like healthier and just have a better quality of life, then yeah, I wouldn't argue with that. And obrigado, you're watching from Portugal. Thank you so much for joining. Muito obrigado.
Warned, like they do in most economies, that high taxes would make businesses uncompetitive. But instead, something unexpected happened. A well-educated and healthy population became one of Denmark's greatest strengths. But that alone didn't make Denmark rich. It's more what it enabled, which was genuine high-value innovation. Take Novo Nordisk, for example. Founded in 1923, this Danish pharmaceutical giant focused on a niche market, diabetes treatment, and became the world leader. Today, it controls nearly 1/3 of the world's insulin supply and has had big successes in other fields like weight loss drugs that aren't technically weight loss drugs, but still helped it recently become Europe's most valuable company with a market cap exceeding $350 billion. Then there's Maersk, the Danish shipping company that moves 14% of global trade. Founded in 1904, Maersk expanded aggressively, taking advantage of Denmark's strategic location between the North Sea and the Baltic. Today, it's one of the largest shipping companies in the world, while the world is trading more than it ever has, for now at least. And then there's wind. Back in the 1970s, while most countries were doubling down on fossil fuels... Wait,
so they have windmills in Denmark? I know it's a sensitive subject in Norway. So what is the difference? Why did Denmark agree, let's go with windmills? And Norway, they're like, okay, no. Let me know if you guys know if there's an answer to that. And the more I watch this, the more it reminds me of the Netherlands.
Back in the 1970s, while most countries were doubling down on fossil fuels, Denmark made an unusual bet. It invested in wind power. At the time, this seemed strange. Remember, this was more than 50 years ago now, so there wasn't nearly the same consciousness around emissions. Oil and gas were still the backbone of the global industry, and renewables were seen as expensive and unreliable. But Denmark stuck with it. Today, that investment has paid off massively. Denmark now produces over 50% of its electricity from wind power alone, far ahead of most other developed nations, which by itself would be a great accomplishment as energy security becomes such a concern. But it also took that knowledge and commercialized it.
Dang,
again,
look at how many.
It's a global leader in renewables, with companies like Vestas exporting turbines worldwide. It also has some of the lowest CO2 emissions per capita amongst developed nations, showing that economic growth doesn't necessarily have to come at the expense of environmental sustainability.
Denmark.
For a small country with limited natural resources, Denmark's economic success is remarkable, but it's not perfect. As a heavily export-dependent economy, it faces rising risks from global trade tensions and shifting tariffs. A slowdown in demand from pharmaceuticals, now one of the most dominant sectors, could ripple across the entire economy. And with global freight rates increasingly volatile, Denmark's shipping industry is exposed to shocks that could hit a high-employment industry. So, how does this all hold together, especially with some of the highest tax rates in the world? Why hasn't that scared off business, slowed growth, or crushed its global competitiveness? The answer doesn't lie in how much Denmark taxes, but in what it taxes.
I love this so much. This is such a beautiful color. It's such a beautiful, it's very pleasant. Okay, so what does it tax? Let's see.
Unlike countries that lean heavily on taxing businesses and payrolls, Denmark shifts much of its tax burden to personal consumption and income. Payroll taxes are costs that employers pay on top of salaries, things like social security contributions and unemployment insurance. Income taxes are paid directly by workers on the money they earn, and in Denmark they are high, with a top marginal tax rate exceeding 55%.
55%.
Then there's the value-added tax on that, a consumption tax added to nearly every purchase. At 25%, Denmark's VAT is one of the highest in the world. Now that might sound like a nightmare for workers, but here's the trade-off. Corporate taxes are relatively low. At just 22%, Denmark's corporate tax rate is below the OECD average of 23.6% and far lower than Germany's 29.9% or France's 25.8%.
How do you have money left over though?
When hiring, reinvesting, or expanding. and it works. Denmark now has one of the highest startup rates in Europe. It supports entrepreneurs with grants, minimal bureaucracy, and a tax system that rewards reinvestment instead of punishing profits.
Okay, but how much disposable income do you guys end up with? If you're watching from Denmark, how much disposable income does actually like you have in your hand? Like, you got to understand. For me, it's hard to kind of like wrap my head around it because, like, what is the average wage or what is the? Because how like it makes no sense. Like for me, everything is expensive here in the UK, and obviously like when I used to work, because now I do YouTube, which is a better deal for me, less stress, just a lot of fun here with the community. But when I was working, it felt like, oh, but I still pay tax, obviously, guys. Even if I do YouTube, I still pay tax. But when I was working like registered, it felt like even 20% was a lot. It felt like even 20% was a lot. Now imagine 55%. And on top of that, 25% VAT. Like how do you guys save up? I don't know how, like, do you guys still have disposable income at the end? Or is it like a trade-off? Like, okay, so I don't have a lot of money left over, but I don't need to pay for my education. I don't need to pay for my medical bills, and it's kind of like it's already paid for kind of thing. Denmark, as the rest of the Nordic countries, is a high trust society. Okay. So, what does that mean? Are you talking about a trust fund, or are you talking about trust the government?
In fact, the World Bank ranks it amongst the easiest countries in the world to do business, thanks to its digital-first administration and...
Okay, so ease of doing business. Denmark is in 4th place. But does it favor those who want to open a company, or like what is the working class? What does that look like? If you're not doing business, if you're not a trader, if you are a working class citizen, how does that work?
Streamlined regulation. That's why cities like Copenhagen have become major startup hubs, attracting founders and investors from across Europe. Now the thing is that eventually corporate profits are distributed to individuals anyway. Shareholders can't fund themselves with business profits alone, they need to be paid out as dividends or shares sold to make a capital gain, so just taxing the individual when that happens achieves the same end result. And here's where it gets even more interesting. Despite its high personal tax rate, Denmark doesn't burden employers with heavy payroll taxes like many other European countries. That makes hiring more affordable, even compared to countries with lower income tax rates but higher labour costs.
Okay.
So businesses save money, workers take home solid wages, and the government still collects enough revenue to fund universal healthcare, free education, and generous benefits.
Okay.
But Denmark's hybrid model doesn't just make life easier for businesses, it also makes life less risky for workers. Like Sweden and Norway, Denmark offers strong worker protections, but it stands out for a unique system called flexicurity, which makes hiring and firing easy while still giving workers a strong safety net. Unlike in countries like France or Italy, where strict labour laws make layoffs expensive and legally complex, Danish companies can let employers go with minimal restrictions. But the key difference is that when workers are let go, they aren't left behind. Instead, laid-off employees receive up to 90% of their previous salary for up to 2 years, depending on their work history and union agreements.
What?
And instead of handing out benefits, Denmark actively helps workers with job training, upskilling, and helping them find new work.
Wait a second. So you get 2 years of 90% of your previous salary so that you can find a new job, and you get support. So that's why people like... I would suppose people don't really care. If they don't like the job, they just quit. Is that it? Or do you need to be fired to be eligible? Dude, that is so interesting. 2 years. Wow. And the government is the one who pays it? They have weekend overtime due to that. We feel so secure. Okay.
The result? Companies aren't afraid to hire, and workers aren't terrified of losing their jobs.
Okay.
The Danish system also supports workers through life's major transitions. Parental leave policies are generous and shared between partners, with up to 52 weeks of leave available, much of it paid. Flexible work options like part-time schemes and remote work help both men and women stay in the workforce, especially after becoming parents, and all of this helps explain why Denmark has one of the highest labour market participation rates in the world, with more than 77% of working-age adults actively
pretty
employed.
cool.
That's comparable.
Okay, so it's not very clear-cut. It's not just simple, okay, this is that, this is that. There are payoffs. There's a model that works. And Ein is commenting here that it's changing recently. Guys, if the model is working, why change it, right? If it's working, why change it? Keep the model going. Keep doing what you do. You're doing better than other countries, you know. But it's very interesting because I don't know the full picture. That's why we're learning here. I don't know the full picture behind what is the trade-off here. Because for me, like in my country, people can lay you off, and that's it. You like you're done. In fact, when there was the lockdown, the government paid, I think, 300 reais. That doesn't even pay for groceries. That's what they paid so that we could stay at home. That doesn't even pay for groceries. In fact, I think weekly groceries is around 500 weekly. It's crazy. So the government doesn't really care about us, and that's that. And that's the reason I left, because I couldn't like I was actually, I had a good thing going. You know, I had like my own private teaching, commerce, you know, my own school, stuff like that, online school. And I think I was earning around 15,000 a month of our money. So that's 10 times more the minimum wage. So I was doing well for myself. I had students. I had like 100, 150 students. I don't know how many. Peak was like 250 students. But I still felt like I couldn't save any money from that. I had to pay wages. I had to pay rent. I had to pay everything. And at the end of the month, I couldn't save 500 reais out of those 15K. It just felt so unfair to work so hard and not see any of the profits, and just work to pay the bare minimum, and I couldn't do anything else. And I was like, you know what? It's so hard. It's so stressful. I need quality of life. So I'm going to go to Europe, where I lived most of my life. If you guys don't know, I lived most of my life outside my own country. So I kind of felt like it's best if I just go where I know how things are. And that's the difference between a third world country and, you know, a first world country. Things work. Things work. Although things have been really annoying here in the UK. Prices has doubled. The internet, I pay for the internet, it doesn't work. It feels like we're turning into a third world country, because I don't see where my taxes go, and I don't want to rant on this, but it just feels like we're being let down. And honestly, I pay for good internet, and I don't receive the service that I'm paying for. And that's one of the things that I felt was so unfair in my own country. And I felt like I can't deal with this anymore. If I'm paying for something, I need to get that value from it. And I hope, you know, where you are right now, probably Scandinavia, I hope things work. You hire a service, you pay a little bit more for it because you want good service, and you get that service. That's how it's supposed to be. You pay for quality, you receive quality. Right now, I feel like I'm paying more than I should, and sometimes I can't even load a YouTube Shorts. And I thank God that my Twitch doesn't have problems. Although YouTube sometimes has problems uploading and stuff like that, but still. When they elected that nut, hey, I'm not going to go into politics there, but you know, things have gone downhill after the lockdown. Let's keep going.
Comparable to Norway and slightly higher than Sweden.
Let's recap. Let's go back 10 seconds. I started ranting. I hope that's why you guys watch me, for my commentary. 10-minute videos have become like 20-minute videos because I have a lot on my mind also.
Helps explain why Denmark has one of the highest labour market participation rates in the world, with more than 77% of working age adults actively employed. That's comparable to Norway and slightly higher than Sweden, countries with similarly advanced economies and social safety nets, and significantly higher than the USA.
I would
where there
love
isn't the
to
same
live in
level of social
Scandinavia.
security, so theoretically people should be more motivated to hold on to a job.
Would you
But
guys
here's the
have
catch.
me?
High taxes and a strong social welfare system only work if people trust their government, and the Danes do. While all Nordic countries
That's one thing I respect. You trust your government. There is no way we can trust our government. The corruption is huge. Corruption perceptions index, #1. Denmark is #1. You guys really trust your government. And I hope your government never lets you down, because you feel so helpless when the government is not there for you, because you believe that they are going to give you, a better life. We're still waiting for that.
score high on trust and transparency, Denmark often tops the list. Government spending is transparent, services are high quality, people see what they get in return for their taxes, so instead of seeing high taxes as a burden, they see them as an investment. That trust is also why inequality is low.
Nice.
Denmark has one of the lowest levels of income inequality in the world, as reflected in its Gini coefficient, a measure of how evenly income is distributed across a population. A Gini coefficient of 0 represents perfect equality, and 1 represents complete inequality, meaning one person holds all of the income. The Gini coefficient of Denmark is 0.28, far lower than the US's 0.41 or the UK's 0.32, despite both countries having some form of welfare. One of the clearest indications of this income equality is how much CEOs earn compared to the average worker. Danish CEOs typically earn 60 times the average worker. In the US, it's closer to 290 times.
Whoa!
Denmark also reduces inequality through policy. Low-income earners benefit from personal deductions and a progressive tax system. These policies mean that some low-income families in Denmark can pay an effective negative income tax rate, where they get back more in support than they put in. Housing policy helps too.
Negative, that
Danish
sounds
homeowners
good.
can lock in fixed mortgage rates for up to 30 years, even between different houses. This prevents the so-called lock-in effect, where homeowners are stuck in place because rising interest rates make it too expensive to move out of a home purchased at a time when interest rates were low.
This right here. There are so many people in the UK that have their house repossessed because they buy shared ownership houses, and the interest rate keeps rising, and they get stuck, and they have to, they have their houses repossessed because they can't finish their payments on a shared ownership. Because shared ownership works like you buy 25% or 50%, but let's say 25%, you buy it, and the other 75% you need to pay as rent. So you think, okay, I can buy 25% and I can afford the mortgage on that, and I can afford the rent on that. And then your mortgage starts going up because of interest rates, and then your rent starts going up because of, yearly increases. And then at the end of the day, in a year's time, 2 years' time, 3 years' time, a decade's time, you find yourself not earning enough to pay the interest nor the rent. Then you just lose the money, you get repossessed, you get into debt. It's crazy. It's absolutely crazy. And, by the way, what is the interest rate on a mortgage in Denmark? Let me know.
At the same time, Denmark provides significant rental housing support for low-income families, keeping housing affordable even in major cities. All of this contributes to a rare outcome: a strong, stable middle class that drives growth. So yes, the Danish model works, but it raises a bigger question. Can other countries actually copy it? Well, it's complicated. Because while high taxes
to
don't
copy
seem to hurt
everything.
Denmark, that doesn't mean the same setup would work everywhere. Denmark has advantages that most countries simply don't. One of those is simply size. With just
Beautiful.
5.9 million people, Denmark is small enough to maintain a high trust, high tax economy without the complexity of governing a massive, diverse population. Compare that to the US with 345 million people, or even Germany with 84 million. Smaller countries can move faster, they're easier to manage, public services are simpler to coordinate, and policies are easy to tweak when things go wrong. It also helps that Denmark is one of the most homogenous countries in the world. Over 84% of its population is ethnic Danish, and most people share a common cultural and historical background. Economists, for obvious reasons, want to be careful about how they say this, but it's human nature that a small, similar group creates a foundation of trust, especially when it comes to things like taxes. According to a Gallup poll, 88% of Danes say they're happy to pay taxes because they believe their government uses them efficiently. Now compare that to the US, where only 16% say they trust the federal government to do the right thing.
16%.
In a low-trust society, high taxes are seen as theft. People assume their money has been wasted, and decades of political gridlock, corporate lobbying, and bloated bureaucracy only reinforce that belief.
Let's talk about New York. Have you ever been to the New York subway? Have you ever been to the... Have you ever taken a public transport in New York? Dude, you will definitely understand why the... you will 100% understand why the trust is so low. I'm curious to see how much trust Brazil has. Hi, Martfrika. I remember the username. I do. Don't remember where you're from, though.
But trust isn't the only thing that Denmark has going for it. It also benefits from geography and trade. Denmark sits in the heart of Europe, surrounded by some of the wealthiest markets on Earth. Nearly 70% of its exports go to European countries, and its trade-driven economy thrives on stable international relationships. Now compare that to a country like Brazil.
Ooh, there we go.
Heavily on volatile commodities like soybeans and iron ore. When global prices fall, the economy takes a hit. So, a Danish-style high-tax, high-welfare model would be much harder to sustain an economy with huge income disparities, weaker institutions, and political instability. And then there's history. Denmark didn't build its model overnight. It took decades of gradual reform and fine-tuning, supported by trust between government, business, and labour. Countries with a history of political instability, weak institutions, or corruption would struggle to implement a similar system.
Yeah.
So, can other countries just copy and paste the Danish model?
No.
Not quite, but they can learn from it. One of the biggest takeaways is that high taxes don't automatically destroy an economy if they're structured the right way. Many countries rely too heavily on taxing businesses and payrolls, which discourages hiring and expansion.
You gotta get the trust from the people
employers
first.
pay over 45% in social security contributions on top of wages, and that makes hiring expensive, slows job creation, and pushes unemployment higher. Denmark avoids this issue by keeping corporate and payroll...
Martfrika, your name is Martin, right? Martin. Yeah, I remember you. Yeah, I remember. You requested a few videos back in the day, right?
Slows job creation and pushes unemployment higher. Denmark avoids this issue by keeping corporate and payroll taxes lower while relying on VAT and income tax instead. Another key lesson, investing in long-term productivity pays off. Denmark spends almost 6% of its GDP on education, keeping its workforce highly skilled. It also invests over 3% of its GDP in R&D, making it one of the most innovative-driven economies in the world. Compare that to Italy, which spends just 4% on education and 1.4% on R&D, and unsurprisingly, it struggles with stagnant productivity and a shrinking industrial base.
And that's why a lot of youth is leaving Italy. Italy is becoming an old country because there isn't any new stuff, and all of the youth, they're just leaving. And Italy is finding it hard to maintain their youth. I guess people are just going other places to learn and study.
The takeaway, investing in people and innovation, as Denmark does, is crucial for sustained economic growth. And finally, labour market flexibility matters. For countries struggling with rigid labour laws or high unemployment, finding a balance between work protections and business flexibility could be the key to unlocking higher economic growth. But here's the thing. Even Denmark faces challenges. Since 1980, almost all of Denmark's population growth has come from immigration. Despite all of the protections afforded to people starting a family, people still aren't doing it. Immigration has helped fill labour shortages in healthcare, construction and services, but it's raised uncomfortable questions about the future of Denmark's welfare model.
That's something that we noticed. The richer the country, or the richer the demograph, or the wealthier the person is, the less children they have. I don't know what the connection is there, but it's I don't know. What is the connection there? It's something that actually, unless you're Elon Musk, obviously. I don't know. You guys, have you seen that statistic before? The richer the people, the less they want to. Is it because they want to work and focus on career? They're career driven and then they're not family driven. Is that it? And hi, Trond. Thank you for joining the chat.
It suggests that low-skilled migrants have higher unemployment and lower tax contributions, which raises concerns about long-term sustainability. In response, the government has made benefits more conditional, new arrivals must meet stricter residency and employment requirements, and Denmark has adopted a work-first approach, prioritising integration and job placement over long-term support.
Work
At the
first.
same time, the country still relies on skilled migration to support key industries, so it's introduced fast-track visa programs for high-demand professions like engineers and IT specialists to attract foreign talent that can contribute to its economy. It's a delicate balance, and it may be Denmark's biggest policy challenge in the decades to come. But immigration isn't the only challenge Denmark faces. Like all developed nations, Denmark is also grappling with an ageing population. Today, nearly 1 in 5 Danes is over 65. An older population means higher healthcare costs, fewer working-age taxpayers, and growing pressure on the pension system, a serious test for any welfare state. But here's where Denmark's strength really lies: adaptability. The same model that helped
I know this is off topic, but they were talking about immigration, and I recently saw that Denmark banned the burqa. What are your thoughts on that? Let me know.
bounce back from war, modernise its economy, and build a thriving middle class is now being used to tackle the challenges of tomorrow, like demographic shifts, automation, and climate change. Denmark is already raising the retirement age gradually to 70, linking it to life expectancy to keep the system sustainable. It's digitising public services at one of the fastest rates in Europe, with over 90% of Danes
That's the
using
same thing in the
digital ID to
UK.
access healthcare, banking, and government portals. And it's investing heavily into healthcare innovation, from robot-assisted surgeries to AI-driven diagnostics in hospitals. All of this is intended to ease further labour shortages. Denmark is also experimenting.
Okay, but do you guys agree that you should work until you're 70? I mean, come on, give me a break. Man, I have worked 25 years? No, not 25. But at least I think 20 years. I've worked 20 years of my life, and I'm already like, come on, man. Okay, let's do YouTube because it's much more stress free than, you know, teaching. Imagine being a teacher until I'm 70. Nah, man. Nah. I mean, isn't that more than the life expectancy? I don't know. Some people, they never get to retire.
Experimenting with automation and AI across industries, from autonomous farming to smart port logistics, including at Maersk, where machine learning is already optimizing global shipping routes. For a long time, Denmark's greatest asset has been its people. It's invested a lot into them and expected a lot from them in return. As these people get older, the country is going to need this technology to fill in the spots where its people can't. Fortunately, with a lot of wealth and the trust that these technologies will be used to support people instead of just replacing them, Denmark is probably one of the best positioned countries in the world to face these challenges. Okay, with all that in mind, it's now time to put Denmark on the Economics Explained leaderboard. Starting as
Martin says, I had a teacher who worked until he was 80. I mean, it's okay if you work because you want to, right? Because I don't want to retire ever. I don't think of retiring. I want to keep working. I want to keep, especially now that I'm on YouTube, I want to be here and, you know, until I don't want to retire. But I want the option to be able to retire. I want the option to be able to decide whether I want to keep working, keep grinding, or not. You know, I wanna have that option. So I think 70 is too much. That's something you have to do until you're 70. It just feels so, I don't know. It feels like it's so consuming. 67 is the retirement age, but isn't it going up? I feel like in the UK they just increased it, and it's increasing every year.
Okay, with all that in mind, it's now time to put Denmark on the Economics Explained leaderboard. Starting as always with size, Denmark has a GDP of just over $407 billion, making it the 35th largest economy in the world, just behind Vietnam and just ahead of Iran. Not massive, but still very respectable for a country with
Vietnam,
fewer people than New York
wow.
City. It gets a 7 out of 10. With only 5.9 million people, its per capita GDP sits at around $75,000, one of the highest in the world. That's more than Germany, the UK, the Netherlands, and even Qatar, a country with almost
Wow.
endless oil wealth. However, it must be noted that it still falls slightly behind the USA. However, its people don't need to work nearly as hard.
What about
to get
Norway?
there. It gets a 9 out of 10. Stability and confidence is high. Denmark is one of the most trusted,
What about
transparent,
Sweden?
and well-run democracies anywhere in the world. Low corruption, strong institutions, and a population that actually trusts its government, that's rare. It gets a 10 out of 10. Growth has been
10 out of
steady, not
10.
explosive, but in a world of economic shocks and for a country already so wealthy, steady isn't a bad thing. The economy's been driven by high productivity, smart innovation, and strong exports, especially in shipping, pharma, and renewables. It gets a 7 out of 10. And finally, industry. Despite its small size, Denmark punches way above its weight. It's home to Novo Nordisk, Europe's most valuable company, Maersk, one of the biggest shipping giants in the world, and Vestas, a global leader in wind energy. Add a booming startup scene and massive R&D spending, and this is a serious innovation hub. It gets an 8 out of 10, only losing points because no matter how innovative it is, it's still small and specialised compared to the true industrial powerhouses of Germany, Japan, and of course China and the USA. That gives Denmark an average score of 8.2 out of 10, putting it all the way up here on the leaderboard. Now, unfortunately, if a certain someone gets their way, the country might end up being even smaller still. The Kingdom of Denmark also includes Greenland, a very barren, very isolated landmass in the middle of the Arctic that the world's most powerful economy wants very badly. We've already made an entire video on why, which you should be able to click to on your screen now. Thanks for watching, mate. Bye.
Greenland, that's a whole nother story. We might react to that. Guys, honestly, if you want to send me news videos, I think those are good also for, our education, our knowledge, and our awareness of things that are happening around the world. This was a great video. I did talk a lot. I was a little bit more passionate than, some things, they really trigger you. And there's a reason why I live where I live. And there's a reason I actually want to retire in Scandinavia. Norway, I loved Norway. I'm going back probably this year. I'm planning on going back this year. I just need to align that with my wife and her holidays, or else I'll leave her behind and just go by myself. Enjoy Norway by myself. But I still need to check out Denmark, and I still need to check out Sweden as well. But definitely Scandinavia would be a country, a region where I would go to retire, especially if this YouTube community keeps growing. So don't forget to join us on Twitch. Don't forget to join us on Discord. And if you like the videos, just join our community. I hope you guys, I hope to see you guys more often. And these videos, I can't be here full time. These are rare videos where we react to longer videos. But if you do feel like you want to support the channel, then you can go and request a video through Buy Me a Coffee. That helps a lot. That makes me be here full time. And yeah. And that's it. Click over here for educational videos, my reactions to them. And I guess that's it, guys. I hope you enjoyed it. Take care. Bye-bye.